Just like 5 more, you'll be all right. 100%. We got Jillian here. All right. I'm gonna show you more of an exciting move that you can utilize, right, Jillian? I know this is something that she likes to do on this young man all the time. And so she's gonna go over it. As you've seen it in real time now. She'll break it down for you guys. So Jillian, go ahead real quick, show them how to do it.
So to set up this, I like to shoot for the single leg first. Usually gets them to react, gets them to kick their leg back and get their head a little bit more forward so that I can commit to it harder. So I shoot it for the single leg, and as he kicks it back, I come up to the clench position here, and I'm gonna shoot to try to get my knee all the way over here when I hop. So,
let's try it again.
It's hard to do it slow.
No, I know. It's one of those things where you really can't drill it slow.
Shooting in the single leg here, getting him to react, coming straight up with my hand on the back of his neck, and then hooking my hand on the back of his shoulder here so I can really pull him down. Shooting my knee all the way over here, and then this leg is gonna go across his face.
Some most athletic shit I've ever seen you do.
I know, right?
Yeah, right. That's all you gotta do is put it in jiu-jitsu terms and she got it. All right, so when's a good time to actually do this in a fight though?
Probably earlier in the fight before you're sweaty and you're all slippery, because then you're gonna fall off.
100%. All right, guys, so those are two techniques you can use. One, very simple, very basic, but effective, and then one, obviously, as you can see, a little bit more star-studded in a way, all right? Thanks. All right, guys, so I did want to go over a couple of things. Obviously, Dean's been in the game forever, not to age him, by the way, but again, he's somebody that coached me, coached all top-level athletes, including Tyron Woodley, multiple world championship fights. But what I did want to ask you though, and what the listeners and what people view and always ask me on questions is like, how do you go about like getting a fighter ready from a mental standpoint, getting their mindset prepared for the fight at hand? And is there anything that you do from a psychological perspective to help them overcome those, you know, those misfortunes of not feeling confident?
Well, I mean, it's a very delicate subject because it's a lot more complex than people think. You know, people see the fighter go out there and they're just like, oh, I can do that. So like, initially, everybody thinks they can fight and you can go out there. So it doesn't seem like it's an issue, like to be psychologically prepared. But fighters have to be psychologically prepared, mentally prepared, just as much as they are physically prepared. So from a coaching standpoint, I have to get them mentally ready to go out there. And not only that, but everybody's a little different, which is why it doesn't make sense for me to work with people like, because back in the day people go, oh, can you coach me? Can you corner me for the fight? And I'm like, man, I don't even know you. But the reality is that you really have to know your fighters and know what makes them tick, know what's going to bring out the best performance in them, because everybody fights for a different reason. And for whatever that reason is, that has to play into the factor of what's going to get the best performance out of them on fight day. Because you can be good in the gym, but on fight day, if you're not prepared mentally, you're not going to show up. So it's all about knowing your fighter and knowing partially why they're there, why they're fighting, or what's going to get them to get in the best performance, get the best performance out of them. Certain fighters require a little bit something more intense. Some of them, but I think for the most part, I think the majority of fighters need to be slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, because do you see a common occurrence with a lot of the fighters? Because I know, everybody's different, but for me, from a structural standpoint, I know that, you know, we got to make sure that their posterior chain's strong, you know, making sure that they have, you know, structural integrity and mobility from a psychological standpoint, especially from a skills perspective. Do you see any common themes that fighters usually act like?
Well, and this goes back to, you know, just human evolution. I mean, obviously the 3 F's, fight, flight, or freeze. So those are the 3 things that are going to happen. They're either going to, and they're not good. So what will happen is they'll either freeze and just not give a performance at all, just kind of sit there. They'll fight, which isn't always good because that means they're rushing. Or they'll run. They'll try to get out. Like I've seen it before. High-level guys, they get nervous and they tap out. They put themselves in a position to lose so that they can control the outcome. And it's easier to control the outcome and be like, I didn't even try hard. You know what I'm saying? Or this happened. But so that's the flight portion.
So true.
Yeah, so fight, flight, or freeze. And those are very common, and you have to be able to deal with those. You know what I'm saying? I think that in terms of that, it's just a matter of just making a fighter comfortable. Because and that's the weird thing, because fighting is such an uncomfortable thing. I have to try to make them comfortable so that they can go into a fight thinking this is just like practice.
Yeah, and a lot of people are very good like you said, very good on the mats in practice, but when they get out there, I think that the ones that put themselves at the highest level, right, and all world champions are the elite, they know how to cope with those stresses very well. Obviously, you know, somebody like a Tyron Woodley, you know, for me, Dustin Poirier, you know, these types of people, they can cope with those stresses in all different atmospheres and produce performance just like they would if they were just in the gym. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the more experience you have, and I want to say this right too, because the more experience you have doesn't always mean you're going to do it good. Because you have to have experience doing it good. Yeah. Because you can have experience doing it bad for years and still be bad at it. So you have to have experience doing it properly and kind of getting into and knowing what mind state you're in. And it's all about knowing what mind state you're in, because you got to be able to get back to that.
Gotcha.
So, and I always, you know, and sometimes in training I go, remember what this feels like. Remember what you're thinking about right now, because right now you are on. Like you are peaking right now, you are on. Feel the sensation in your body. What are you thinking about? Because on fight day, we need to get back there.
Gotcha.
Because what's going to happen is on fight day, you're going to be thinking about winning and losing. Your friends are going to be like, you got this, bro. And then next thing you know, you're going to be in the back shaking. Yeah. And you're not going to be here. We need to get here.
Yeah. Do you go through any type of checklist when you first start out with an athlete? Fighter comes in to the house and you're like, okay, I need to figure out this person's mindset right away. Is there any like checklist that you go through as far as like just from a communication standpoint? Are you interviewing them, or are you just watching them day to day and kind of getting a feel for how they overcome adversity, even inside the training grounds, but also watching fights in general?
Well, I'm very creepy about this. I'm like, I'm kind of creepy about it because like in order to get to know them, like I have to like know what makes them tick. So I'm paying attention to all these little things, like, you know, what gets the best out of them. So I have to pay attention to that stuff. Yeah. So it's kind of like an interview, but it's not like a formatted interview. It's nothing like organized. Yeah. But I am paying attention to the little things that they're doing so that I can build a relationship with them, because the most important thing I can have with a fighter is a relationship. Yeah. I can't just work with a person that I don't like or that I don't have a relationship with, because I have to know what makes them, again, gets the best performance out of them. And everybody's a little different. So there are certain things that I'm looking for, and it's just like their personality traits. Yeah. And that's the most important thing, because fighting is merely an extension of your personality. So like if your personality is an aggressive personality, you're probably going to be an aggressive type fighter. So I have to train you in that way. Yeah. So
that's funny, because that goes back to like when I look at it from like a neurotransmitter dominance perspective, like going back to science a little bit. If I got a highly dopamine dominant individual that's like that, want to go. That's how I would actually coach them, and they would have to use a lot of variation. And that's the same thing probably with a lot of the fighters. Like a guy like Mike Perry probably needs that variation. He probably needs, you might probably need to pull him back a little bit, right? Yeah, in a sense. And then you got a guy that's very acetylcholine dominant, which is very like more analytical. That could be something like a Jillian Roberts or somebody else of that nature that really has to think cognitively on what they have to do and be calm as much as possible. Do you see that with most fighters?
Yeah. And so I like to think of myself as kind of like a doctor, Yes. And that's I look at fighters and I go, what's wrong with this fighter? Why isn't this fighter winning easier? Yeah. Or why are they losing? But more so, why aren't they winning easier? What are the issues that they're having? Is it a psychological issue? Is it a physical issue? Because I think a lot of fighters don't understand what their biggest problems are, and a lot of coaches don't understand it either, because they're always looking at it from a perspective of, like if you're a kickboxing coach, well, I'm a kickboxing coach, so this is what I do, so obviously your problems are in kickboxing. So we're going to hold pass. I'm going to hold pass. But for me, I'm like, I'm looking at it from a perspective like I'm breaking this person down and going, what's wrong with this person?
Yeah.
Like they might be a good kickboxer, but they don't measure distance well. So the problem isn't actually in kickboxing. It's their ability to measure distance.
Yeah.
Or maybe their grip strength is weak. They're like a decent grappler, but they have like a weak grip.
Yeah.
So I have to find those little things and go, this is your problem.
Sure.
And now we can fix this and everything is going to come together because you got all these pieces that are working, but there's no glue because you're missing something.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. You're looking at, a lot of coaches look at it from the macro level, right? They're looking at like from a whole, right? Like you said, kickboxing. Like all kickboxing coaches, they want to get the guys doing kickboxing more and more and more. Wrestling coaches, same thing, wrestle. But yeah, going and breaking it down into the micro level and finding out the details. And that's very important. That's just something when you have a coach of a full coach, right? Somebody who puts it all together. And that's something that you do very well. When I was fighting for you, sometimes I didn't know if I did things wrong or right because you never really had that stoic look, right?
Everyone says that.
Yeah, but which is fine. When I was younger, I didn't understand it to a degree because I remember I won my first amateur fight and I was like, Dean, I won. And you're like, all right, cool, when you coming back to train? So I was like, damn. But then I thought about it, I'm like, he's just kind of setting me up for the future, you know? And honestly, what you've done there was to never dwell on the past, no matter good nor bad, right? It's always keep moving forward. And honestly, I attribute that to you in a lot of ways because when I was that young kid, you go back in the past, like I always talk about, like the interviews we did back in the day, I had that, but I had to get it out of me. I had to have somebody bring it out of me. And that's why I'll always be indebted to you because of that, you know what I'm saying? And these people have to understand that too, the ones that are coming to you and actually putting their trust in you to coach them.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me is it's got to be trust on both levels. Like they have to trust what I'm doing, and then I trust them too. Like if they tell me they're hurt, then I have to believe that they're hurt. But it's just all about having good communication. Again, it's the relationship and the communication that you have with your fighters. And again, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm a little different than most coaches because I don't come from a background. I didn't come from like a wrestler. I didn't wrestle competitively ever. I don't come from a wrestling background. I didn't come from a kickboxing background. I started doing everything at once. So I've always looked at it from a perspective of we got to figure out how to win the fight. So I'm going to use whatever I have to use to win the fight. So, but now, I mean, the game's so much more evolved and sophisticated that I'm so much more detailed. And there's always attention to the detail. And I was actually telling Zoila Frosto yesterday about, some other things that helped me to be a better coach than most people is my background in acting. Because it's so detailed. Like being an actor is so detailed. It's not just remember these lines and say them. It's not just remember lines and say them. There's so much detail involved. And so I take that approach with fighting. It's the attention to the detail, not just get stronger and punch people. It's just so many small little things you got to be aware of.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That shows why you're one of the best in the industry. So I do appreciate it. Listen, we're going to go ahead and let this man do his work, and we'll follow along the backstages of things. So stay tuned.